Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365. It's NFL Combine Day, which kicks off today, and we have you here for 2 hours on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, brother?
Excited. Underwear Olympics finally get on the, well,
Yeah,
a bit facetious, but some actual workouts at the NFL Combine today. So, and defensive line as well. So defensive front, which should be a big interest to the Eagles. So maybe the biggest day from the standpoint of the group of players working out for the Eagles.
John, what's your favorite part of the Combine as we kick it off? You've been covering this
When it's over.
long. When it's over. No, you're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to go negative on me. What's your favorite part of the Combine?
Well, it's not negative. Who did I hear talking about? He's like, some teams, Sean McVay, most notably, they don't even show up anymore to the Combine.
Yeah, Shanahan's not there either.
They did a great job, by the way, the Rams in the draft last year. They don't show up to the Combine. Most teams do. The important part is the stuff that nobody pays attention to. The important stuff is the interviews and the medical, as you saw with Abdul Carter last night. They find he has a stress thing in his foot. He's got to have surgery most likely, so that might knock him from number 1 to number 5 or something.
They called it a stress reaction.
Stress reaction.
I'm not sure what the difference between that and a fracture is, but
well, if they're talking about putting a screw in the foot, they're trying to make it sound better. It's a stress fracture.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, that's the most important part. It was Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles was on Sirius, I believe, and said, I don't care about the workouts. It's like he's got the film. They get all that information directly sent to them. So, it's about getting to know the players, as and people will say, 15-minute meetings, how much can you get to know a player? Well, it might not be positive. You can sink your whole career in 15 minutes. Yeah. I mean, if you show up and you're
or at least with one organization. Yeah, with one organization you can.
Yeah, so you can, it's important to make a good first impression, obviously. And those meetings are meaningful, I think, and teams should show up. I don't advocate teams that don't show up, but because what else are you doing? I mean, come on, you might as well show up.
Yeah, and I value the face-to-face. I really do. I
think that is valuable, right. But the actual workout stuff that people get, that's not valuable to them. The medical stuff by far is the most valuable,
right? By
far. And that's when you get everybody together and you get these, Abdul Carter's so high profile, but there'll be a bunch of other players affected by that as well that they're going to find things out about. So that part of it's important. The least important part is the part that they've made into an event, and that's the working out the 40 times and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good stuff there. Looking forward to seeing what comes of it. John mentioned the Abdul Carter stuff. Yeah, we'll see what happens with him. Stress reaction, might have to get surgery. They're kind of saying he might not have to, but I think he's going to have to get surgery. How much will that impact his draft stock? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. John, the other thing that came out yesterday, and I got some good Combine topics that we will get into, and I liked a lot of what you said there with, putting faces to a name and meeting people and stuff like that. The NFL owners, what was that called? The owner survey? What was that thing called that came out yesterday?
Oh, the NFLPA survey. Yeah, they do that every year. The Eagles did not score well. That most of the things with the Eagles are the team travel has been an issue for a number of years. For whatever reason, they don't fix that to the players' desire. And then the second part that I talk about occasionally is that the NovaCare complex is just outdated compared to the newer facilities around the league. So you look at 1-2, Miami, Minnesota. They have the two best facilities in the NFL. Dallas is in that conversation as well. All these new facilities have been built over the past number of years. really, really trump what the Eagles have going on in South Philadelphia, to the point where I'm surprised that Jeffrey Lurie hasn't pushed to improve. And it's going to be really difficult to do where they are, because they don't own the city owns all the land around the NovaCare complex. So it's very complicated. Obviously, Philadelphia is a blue tape city, so to speak, when it comes to stuff like that.
Right.
At least I'm surprised they haven't considered moving to the suburbs and building one of these first class facilities.
Right.
Obviously hasn't hurt them yet. They just won the Super Bowl. But I do think eventually it's going to hurt them because they are way behind when it comes to facilities to some of these teams that have the brand new. And like I said, there's no coincidence that Miami and Minnesota are 1-2, and they have been the past 2 years. It's got to do with their facilities.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the gradings are a little weird. I got to be honest. I mean, I'm looking at some of them here, and the only things that they were below a B in were treatment of families, C-, D+ locker room, which is facilities, and then team travel, which is F. Everything else, and yeah, like, but
I don't know why they can't fix that. By the way,
head coach, 18th in the NFL. And he's got an A-, and the guy just won and they just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you know what that
like
tells
that's where I'm like, wait, we have 17 coaches in the NFL who are above an A-, above Nick Sirianni. Okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? There's not even 17.
Remember, I know people get so upset about this stuff. Remember what it is. It's players in their workplace. They're not defining Nick Sirianni as like an X's and O's guy.
Right.
Number one. It has nothing to do with that. And as you mentioned, he's 18th and he's got an A-, as you mentioned. Well, what does that tell you? That tells you the players aren't completely stupid, and they say they like their boss for the most part.
Right.
To give an A, but compared to the other guys who are all getting A's as well, because nobody wants to blow up their boss. So, from the standpoint of Sirianni, the only notable part is they said he was moderately receptive. This surprised me a little bit. Moderately receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs, which, if you think about this season, they shifted their whole freaking way they play football because Lane and Jordan walked in there during the bye week and said, dude, let's just run the ball. So I was a little surprised by that. And what I think comes down to, like, he only pays attention to the stars, which is, Jimmy Johnson, common sense.
Welcome to the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're Lou Nichols, who they just re-signed, and you're going, yeah, he's probably not going to listen to you. And that's with every coach, but it has nothing to do. And I don't know if was your assumption, but I know it's a lot of people's assumption. There's nothing to do with X's and O's and success on the field.
It's a player. It's the NFLPA, which is
it's got to do with the workplace.
Right.
Nobody's saying Nick Sirianni, because I know Philadelphia fans boy, man, you guys are the best team in the NFL. You guys are in people's heads. And I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to fans. Act like it. Not everything is an affront. Act like it. Nobody's disparaging. That's not what this is about. Nick Sirianni, X's and O's. So, A, understand what it's about, and B, stop acting affronted by everything. Tush push. Jalen Hurts not getting personal foul calls. You're the best team in football. Act like it.
I like it. On the screen, you can see the list of rankings that there is there, the grades that came out. As John mentioned, it's not an indictment on anybody. It's more of just the workplace environment. That's what the NFLPA is trying to improve on. So you can see that list in front of you. The one thing I would say if I'm Jeffrey Lurie is why are we grading out an F in team travel? We probably want to improve that. I don't know. What is that? Is that about the plane? Is that about the hotels? Like, what is that about?
Well, it's about the plane mostly, because that's been an issue for years. And for whatever reason, the Eagles they made some adjustments. They had scored much better last year, coming into last year's. They were fourth last year and dropped down all to 22. The year prior, they were really bad. And one of the issues was team travel. And they added an extra plane and more room. They give the first class seats to the coaches. Players obviously think it should go to the players. That's one I can't tell you why he just doesn't fix it. I mean, he fixes everything else with the exception of the facility, and there's a lot of politics involved there.
Right.
I don't know why he won't fix it, but that seems like an easy fix to me. And they generally try to make the players as happy as possible, as comfortable as possible, and it's not working. It's not working when it comes to team travel. And then the second thing, I got a lot of, because I put out the grades and I put out the highlights, and one of the other things people seem to have a real problem with is the family part of it, the treatment of families. They got a poor grade, bottom 5 or bottom 6. And they're one of 3 teams that do not provide daycare during home games. Now, I don't give a shit about this, to be perfectly honest, but I got so many people.
Right.
Well, I don't get daycare. First of all, you're not an NFL player. Second of all, if your company, wherever you worked, had 31 competitors and 29 of them offered it, you'd probably be pissed off if you knew about that.
Right.
It's comparison. Yeah, our NFL players get a lot of perks. Of course, they make a shitload of money. They generate a shitload of money. They're going to get more perks than me and you as a listener. That's just part of it. When 29 of 30 teams have it and you don't, people are going to notice it.
So the biggest takeaway is we need a new plane and we need daycare. I think problems are pretty good in Eagle Land if that's what we're coming up with here on February 27th. We need better daycare facilities.
Well, they need the biggest one is they need a new facility.
Yeah,
they need a new facility. I've been talking about this for years because I've seen some of these facilities, and the Eagles ain't close. They don't even. There are high schools in Texas that have better facilities than
Texas high school football, John, is something else. I lived in Texas for 2 years. I went to the high school football games just for sheer entertainment. That is a spectacle, my friend.
I know. And if you walked into Miami's, the Eagles had a joint practice down there a couple of years ago. It's not even the same realm. The New York Jets, terrible organization, beautiful facility.
Yeah.
Minnesota, when the Super Bowl was out there, I had a chance to tour their facility. It is, they have a fireplace in the locker room. I was joking. Lewis Seen, I asked him, came over from, he was originally drafted by Minnesota.
Right.
He said he had to leave early to get to team meetings because the place is so big. It's night and day. These newer facilities, Dallas as well.
Is that simply just Lurie investing the money in it? Is that all that is really?
Well, no. As I said, there's a lot of politics involved. They have this Navy lot right next to the NovaCare complex. In theory, they could just take that lot and build and expand it, and everything would be copacetic. But the city owns it, and the city isn't giving it to the Eagles.
Right.
And everything's involved in money. To me, the easiest fix is just go to the suburbs, but they don't want to go to the suburbs. Some people like that. Some people don't like that. But if the city's not going to work with you, and at some point, again, it hasn't cropped up to this point because the Eagles do a good job with basically everything else. But guys, when they come in here from different places and they've seen other facilities, know the difference. And it's freaking noticeable. And look, if somebody's going to pay you more money, you're going to come here. If somebody's wants to win, they're going to come here right now. But if it's even, and somebody's got the Taj Mahal and you got that dump,
Right.
it could ship you the other way.
Can't make it. Can't. I wonder if there's an element. Can't make it too sweet. Got to make them need something more so they stay motivated.
I don't think that's it.
No, I don't
at all.
I'm just messing around. No, it's we'll see what they end up doing with all that. Obviously, got to improve in the locker room, but again, I'm with John. Not that big of a deal on that stuff. You look at the grades. I mean, they're a B in most stuff, so they're in a good spot, and they just won the Super Bowl as well. So don't take it personal, but couple things that the Eagles could improve on: the plane and the locker room and the facilities being one of them. I can't say I care about daycare, John. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I can't.
Oh, I mean, people with kids do, but it's the point. Again, it's the point. If everybody else has it, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, I get it. If 29 teams didn't have it, then I go, I'm with you. All right, you got enough money, figure it out. NFL players. But when everybody else in your industry has it for the most part, then you're in Arizona Cardinals territory.
Right.
The teams that make you buy your food, or the teams that do chintzy stuff like that. That's you're in that category when it comes to that particular aspect of it. And as Nick Sirianni will tell you, you never want to be bottom 5 in anything. And that includes daycare. If you want to be a top tier organization.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense to me. That makes sense. I mean, you want to create an environment too where your players can be the best player they can be as well, and I think that might be part of it as well. But good stuff there. We'll see what they end up doing. And I think it is fair to mention what Eagle Nest brings up here. They were already talking about a new stadium during the media week with Jeffrey Lurie. So now with the Super Bowl under the belt, Johnny Mac, the extra money from merchandise sales. Maybe we'll have some upgrades coming to everything.
They got plenty of money.
I know that ain't the issue.
It's the political part of it, and basically, to be honest with you, I blame the city of Philadelphia more than the Eagles. If the Eagles
about everything, yeah,
the Eagles, want to stay in the city for because they want to be part of the city, and they don't want to go to South Jersey, or they don't want to go to the main line,
right?
Where there's plenty of space. They could tomorrow. They could say, you know what? This is outdated. We're leaving. We need a newer facility. They don't even have a full bubble to practice in bad weather. Again, Texas high schools have full bubbles.
Right.
The punter hits the top of the bubble, all the time. You can't even punt. It's really not behest. It's not becoming of the Philadelphia Eagles to be where they are, but they're doing it to stay in the city.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I credit the Eagles for sticking it out as long as they have. In that one, I would more blame the city.
I do love them being in the city. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of my friends when I was in high school grew up. They live right across from the NovaCare complex there in in South Philly, in their row homes. But I love them being down there. But if the city's not going to make your life easier or not going to give you what you need, I mean, what the hell are you going to do?
At some point, you got to go.
Right. At some point.
And I'm surprised they haven't made that decision already, because they could easily get sweetheart deals and all over the place and get as much room and as much space to build whatever they want. Jeffrey Lurie's not going to say no. He's going to build a first-class facility, and they should have a first-class facility. Right now, they don't.
Right.
Anybody who tells you differently is lying.
No doubt about it. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, as I mentioned, Combine kicks off today. We talked about the Abdul Carter stuff. Interesting stuff going on there. I got a general draft question, John, I want to start with you on. I think it's one of those things that's kind of debated and talked about, but I do want to get your perspective on it. On Birds 365 when it comes to drafting, especially when you're at a spot like 32 and then in the second round, third round, fourth round. Need versus best player. It's one of those debates or topics that people talk about. I mean, when you're in top 10, I think best player, it's always best player. But when you're sitting at a spot like 32, the board is a little bit more subjective at that point. How do you decipher need versus best player? And what do you think is the right approach for any organization? obviously specifically talking about the Eagles, but what is the right approach when you're sitting at 32 and you got to draft somebody? Need, best player? How do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually as you go lower, it becomes more need, more need is the worst talent evaluator in sports.
Right. I agree with that. Yep.
You know, Brian Billick's the first one who told me that. It always stuck with me. He's not the first to say it, but the minute you start reaching for something because you need it, you're probably going to make mistakes. So actually, the lower you go on the board, it's more you should be just take the best player, period, and then figure the rest out. Now, there's also some context to that. In the NFL, obviously, if you have a starting quarterback, you're not
right.
If the quarterback's the best player on the board, you're not taking a quarterback. So for the most part, Eagles did it once, famously. But for the most part, you're not going to do that. Think about the last time they were 32. They could have had Lamar Jackson. I have never criticized them for not taking Lamar Jackson at that time. And I'm pleasantly surprised how few Eagles fans have done that. Because it just wasn't a need at the time, and it wasn't even in the conversation. But you could, in hindsight, obviously he was the best player available at that particular point. So there is some context to it, but in general, I describe it as you take the best player at your group of positions you have a need in, if that makes sense. So you never have everything you want, but there are certain positions you're going to rule out because you're so deep or, you're so entrenched. The Eagles aren't taking a running back,
Right.
You're coming off a year where the guy had more rushing yards than anybody in the history of the game. All right. Even if the running back is the best player at 32, you're not taking him. And then there's positional value and all that stuff. But for the most part, the minute you start reaching, we need an edge rusher, we're going to take the best edge rusher, and there's like 5 guys better on the board, you're bored, you're going to make a mistake. Yeah. So always take the best player in the group of the cluster of positions, because even the best team in football, even the Super Bowl champions, the Eagles need help in a bunch of different places, especially as they start to lose free agents, whether it's defensive front, most notably. If you're not bringing Slay back, you could even think about how deep they are at cornerback. Well, then you got to re-sign Isaiah Rodgers, and you got to probably draft somebody as well. So there's a bunch of positions, and certainly as you get lower on the totem pole, coming off a bad season, New York Giants, teams like that, they need everything. So it's easier for them. But a lot of teams, obviously, most notable is quarterback. Quarterbacks always get pushed up the board, always. Even in bad years like this. Cam Ward will go a little bit before he should. Sanders will go a little bit before he should. Even Jackson, Dart, guys like that will go before they should because of the position, the importance of the position, the desperation of teams at the position. And generally, the teams that do that make mistakes, generally. Now, there's some years where last year, those top 2 guys probably deserved it. I would argue Jaden Daniels should have been ahead of Caleb Williams, but, 1-2, 2-1.
Right.
They probably deserved it. This year, somebody like Cam Ward's going to be the first quarterback. He's going to go before he should. It's just the nature of the quarterback position.
Yep, nature of the draft. Here's the one thing I would pose, we just talked about need versus best player. Let's say you're sitting in the draft and you got a couple guys that are graded out at the same on your board or so close that you don't view them as different from a talent perspective. Is that a point where you would go need? Like you have 3 players there, you have them all graded out on your draft board the same. You're going to take the position you need the most there. Would that be fair to say?
For most teams, but not all teams, the Eagles would be an example of Cam Jurgens being the most notable example. If Cam wasn't there, they would have taken Jacoby Dean at 51, I believe.
Right.
And they ended up getting him in the 3rd round anyway. But they drafted Cam Jurgens because they believe in, if it's even and they had those guys even on their board, they're gonna take the offensive lineman or the defensive front person if it's completely even. That's sort of their foundational philosophy, and it's worked very well for them. So would most teams do it the other way, like you're describing? Yeah, probably. But I think the Eagles are more disciplined than most teams, to put it mildly.
So another good way,
which again, to Eagles fans, start recognizing this stuff. Stop acting affronted. Like everybody wants to be the Eagles now. Take pride in that.
Everybody in the NFC certainly does. They're all looking up at the Eagles like, how do we compete with that team moving forward? It's going to be interesting to see. There's going to be an interesting offseason. You know, I think Detroit's a team that's going to try and make a bunch of moves and be aggressive. I think the Commanders are going to be uber aggressive. I could see the Packers being aggressive. I don't know where they stand in terms of cap space and flexibility and stuff like that, but I could see them being aggressive. The Vikings, I can't really tell if they're going to be good again or if they were,
depends on the quarterback.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. They're going to move on from Darnold, but presumably. What is J.J. McCarthy going to look like? I don't really know. So I don't know. I think everybody in the NFC is going to be looking at the Birds, trying to claw up on their heels and get to their level.
Oh yeah, I mean they're the Super Bowl champions. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean they're what everybody's chasing.
But
They're
it's more. I
100.
think it's more so than that, John, because the Rams won the Super Bowl a few years back or 4 years back, or however long it was. I don't think teams looked at their blueprint and said, "Okay, I want to copy that." I think the Eagles have, really done like good business, and there's an art to what they've done. At least in my opinion, that teams look at and they're like, "We got to try and replicate that because that is success now and built for the future."
Well, you would think so, but that's one of the things. I bring up Jake a lot, Jake Rosenberg. What we call this a copycat league. They don't copy the right things. Like they're worried about getting Milt Williams or Josh Sweat or Zach Bond or Mekhi Becton to a certain degree, breaking off a piece of that Super Bowl mojo instead of realizing, yeah, it's not about those individual guys. I mean, they're all good players, but it's not going to, getting Milt Williams is, you're going to get a good player. It's not going to change your team outside of Philadelphia. You're going to get a good player. Like you might get a good player in the draft. You might get a good player in free agency. Excuse me, cough coming back. But they haven't copied the way the Eagles do business. Well, at least most teams haven't yet. That better start to change, or they're going to be in perpetual chase mode all the time. Because the Eagles' success isn't dependent on one player. It's dependent on their philosophy and how they do it. And how do they sign all these big name players? Well, they do it with voidable years and cash up front and kicking the credit card payment down the road, basically, to boil it down to its simplest form. And most teams don't do that. Could be the owner, could be cash poor like Cincinnati or Las Vegas, But that's the part that teams have to copy, and I don't think they figured that out. But if you look at and the salary cap isn't 100%, but everybody knows where it's going. If you look at the teams in the NFC that have the most space, Washington, it's got 82 million projected over the cap.
They're going to make some moves.
Chicago, just under 80. Now you can say, well, they stink. Well, yeah, but now they have Ben Johnson. He'll figure out something. He'll figure out something with Caleb Williams. They'll be better. Arizona has 76 million. And they were 32nd in that NFLPA. The only good grade they got was Jonathan Gannon, for all the Jonathan Gannon haters. The Vikings have 63 million. So they have a ton of space. The Lions have a ton of space, over 52. The 49ers are over 50. The Packers are just under 50. All these names. Giants are 48. God, they should be higher. What a mess they are.
Yeah, they're
Rams 44. Going down the list. Panthers, these are just NFC teams. Panthers 29. They should have more. And then you hit the Eagles at just over 22. So there's a bunch of teams. I got a bunch more space than the Eagles. Doesn't matter if you don't do anything with it. And by the way, this is not how he called this a maintenance offseason. What he meant by that is ain't a lot of good free agents.
No, there's not.
So,
I mean, some of the best free agents are the ones coming from the Eagles.
Yeah. This is not the year. And if you look at the top free agents, if you want to go, T. Higgins, number one from most people. The Eagles don't need a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Trey Smith is never going to see the open market. He's a good player. Javon Holland's number 3.
You think Trey Smith will be back in Kansas City?
Yeah. I don't even think he'll hit the open market. And most of these guys, and then you're talking about Chris Godwin, at his age, Khalil Mack, he's 34 years old.
Yeah, come on. I'm out on that.
Amari Cooper's, he's post 30. Ronnie Stanley's almost 31. Good player, but
yeah, you're
not looking at a tackle.
You're not looking at a good crop of talent here or foundational pieces, that's for sure.
No. Hassan Reddick's back out there. He's post there. Stephon Diggs is 31.
What a fumbling of the bag for Hassan Reddick.
This is a garbage free agency class. And the guys who are going to get overpaid. Milton Williams is one of them. I'm looking down the list. Cam Bynum. He's a good player. But who cares? He's going to get overpaid. I would stay away from free agency for the most part. Now, there'll always be some bargains. You think about Dre Greenlaw.
Yeah, I've been thinking about Dre Greenlaw.
Now, the Eagles, in theory, don't need a linebacker, but in traditional year, I'm talking about teams as a whole. But because of his injury, and it's a gamble because you never know. Achilles' injury is pretty significant. He made it all the way back, and then he shut him down again. But if that extra time gives him time to get out, he was a really good linebacker.
Yeah,
I mean, and you might be able to get him on the cheap, and something could click there. But the top of the free agency market, just a bunch of. That's what's always. I mean, good players getting paid great money, which is not the way to generally win. Right. Occasionally, and people go, well, what about Saquon? Yeah, it worked, but that's an outlier.
There is no free agents like that this year, though. I mean, last year, there was not Saquon. There was Derrick Henry. There was Josh Jacobs. I mean, there was just great running backs last year. I mean, I don't know. This free agency class is not good. I think Slager brings up a good one here. Occasionally, a team is stupid about overpaying. Huff comes to mind. Yeah, it's true, right? As of right now.
Everybody makes mistakes, including the Eagles. And Howie says that every time he talks. You're not going to get everything right. I mean, I don't – not saying that's what Slager's saying, but, I mean, the people who think you never get anything wrong, I mean, what have you been watching? If you're around for as long as Howie Roseman, you're going to get a bunch of shit wrong.
Yeah, that's fine. But Howie, I'm sure, as he always has, will learn from that mistake and probably not fall into that trap again.
Well, he'll make a mistake signing a free agent at some point because it's the nature you're dealing.
Yeah, but
with
not all mistakes are created equal. I mean, I think Howie probably looks at that contract and is like, "Yeah, we went too big there. I mean, too quick."
I don't know. I don't know. It's not, it's one of those things. Same thing I say with Rager, which was obviously the biggest draft mistake recently. Like the hindsight of it is, well, the Eagles, like he wasn't going to get drafted 2 picks later, which he was.
Right.
Like they were out on an island. Like there were 4 teams trying to sign Bryce Huff at similar money.
Right.
Like they weren't out on an island thinking, oh, we're smarter than everybody else. Yeah. That part is always revisionist.
Yeah, but isn't there also an element of, you talk about margin for error all the time, John. Isn't there lessons to learn there to improve the margin or improve the odds that you don't make a mistake like that? I'm sure there is. I'm sure Howie's looked at them all. Doesn't mean he's not going to make mistakes. I mean, if you're going to take shots to be good, you're going to make mistakes. That's the reality of it. If you're going to play conservatively all the time, then yeah, you might not make as many mistakes. But I'm not saying that, but I'm sure there's something they can do to refine.
Well, I always Andrew Berry has, he did. I don't know if he still did, but he's got a big whiteboard in his office, and one of the things he's got written on his whiteboard was, and I'm paraphrasing, but was a Howie Roseman quote when he learned from Howie when he was here, and that's to win, you got to make a decision that could get you fired. Basically, you got to be bold, which ironically, that's bullshit because Howie's not getting fired because Jeffrey gives him that ability to make a mistake, whereas Andrew probably doesn't have that same ability. However, you get the point. You get the point behind the sentiment. You got to be bold, and you got to make serious gambles to succeed at the highest level. And you're gambling on people, so you're gambling on flawed mortal beings. And in the case of Howie, part of it might be he's just stubborn, and part of it might be he's just trying to keep what trade value there's alive for Bryce Huff, the smart thing to do.
Right.
But I got to tell you, it was pretty compelling when he said the story hasn't been written and the injury, and they probably have to keep him for 1 more year, so he's going to get 1 more chance.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it is Vic. Will Vic use him? That might be as big. That might be what he learns.
That's 100%. That's where my mind is with that is, can Bryce Huff be better than he was? I'm sure he can. I'm sure he has it in him, but will Vic want him on the field? I don't know. That's one thing, John, I am hoping you are right about it and I am wrong about it. And that's that Bryce Huff can be more than he was this year, because I really think the team's going to need him to be better in order for them to have a competent edge rush. Because as you talked about, there's not many guys in free agency. If you're not going to make a trade for Myles Garrett, which I get it's out there and it's possible, but it's probably unlikely. You're looking at a draft guy, 32. I mean, that's big risk there. That's needing a lot early from a drafted player.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the top edge rushers in free agency: Khalil Mack, who's 34 years old; Josh Sweat, who you have and don't want back; Hassan Reddick, who's not coming back here. Trust me.
You don't see that, right, with a Gardner Johnson situation with him?
No.
I don't either.
Malcolm Kuntz might be sort of an under the radar guy from Las Vegas. Baron Browning, he stinks on ice. Everybody talks about him every year. Does nothing. But Vic had him, so maybe that and he's sort of got a little bit like he's half off ball linebackers, half edge rusher. Right. Who does that reminds you of? And then Chase Young, Azeez Ojulari is the guy we brought up. That's a guy I might take a swing at. He's not even 25. Good natural.
How productive has Ojulari been? Because I do like him.
Not terribly productive, but again, bad team. But he's more of a he's more of a one-trick pony. Like he's
only 240 pounds.
Yeah, he's just a pass rusher. But as a situational guy, as a third down guy, I think he could help you. And if you really want to go like somebody who's older, because you're a Super Bowl team and you want to stick it to the Dallas Cowboys. Boy, if you believe DeMarcus Lawrence is healthy, and that's a big if. I mean, that dude can play. But there's not a lot out there. Not a lot out there.
Nope, not a lot out there at all. We'll see what they end up doing, John. I do want to get your take, John, if you can. I don't know where you are in terms of your draft prep yet, but I got some topics to talk about on the team and how to replace them, and the draft will be included in that. But before I go there, I do want to ask you about some players that you have in mind right now for the Eagles. They're sitting at 32 and 64 with their first 2 picks. Not particularly high up the board. That's what you get when you win a Super Bowl. Do any players come to mind for you right now at those positions, or at least just a group of names? I'm not saying you're making a mock or anything like that, but just a group of names, maybe a position that you like right now for those first couple of picks.
Well, it's definitely defensive front, and I did. I'm trying to pull it up. I did.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not a little bit more saying like offensive lineman. Like I
did write about the offensive line as well.
Right.
You never say never at offensive line, but to me, there's not a ton of guys who deserve to be in that bottom. Like there's the kid from North Dakota State that Daniel Jeremiah brought up. I got to look him up. Now you got me because I'm way behind on draft prep. But he brought him up as a versatile guy that's a Jeff Stoutland type of player. And that's not necessarily a bad way to think about it because they're always, when we talk about need, when you're talking about need versus best player available, if he's the best player available, that's a position where they're gonna be willing to take it. If they're thinking about trading down, which I'm sure they want to trade down, but the problem with that is somebody's got to want to trade up. And typically the teams that want to trade up to 32 want the 5th-year option on a quarterback.
Right.
But I asked Jeremiah that, and there's nobody there. Jackson Dart, Tyler Shoe, whatever his name is from Louisville, those guys are not worthy of that pick. So it's going to be very difficult. And then if you think about that 2017, 2018 mentality, where they traded out because it was the Lamar pick, and then they traded back up to get Dallas Goedert, tight end, which has worked out very well. This is a good tight end draft. So if they want to replicate that, they could do that.
Right.
There's a bunch of tight ends. Jason Taylor's kid. That could be a way they could go. There's a kid from Miami. Gray Zabel is the North Dakota State offensive lineman. More of an interior guy, but he can play all 5 positions. So Stoutland would love him. Elijah Arroyo is the Miami tight end. So those are some off the beaten path, but mainly it's defensive front people, because the projection is you're going to lose Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, to be honest. And you gotta figure out a way to do that. And you got to get young players, and you got to get them on the field quickly. So it could be edge or it could be interior. They're going to need both positions. And who falls to 32?
Right.
I think it's more likely to be a defensive tackle than it is an edge rusher. So a Shamar Stewart, that's a kid who I think could be good from Texas A&M. Is he really going to fall to 32? I don't see any way that happens. Now, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, he might fall to 32. I doubt it. But that's somebody to keep an eye on. I would say the kid from Ohio State is somebody I brought up. And he's more Jack Sawyer. He's more of
I like him.
He's more of a bigger, physical base end, if you want to go back to the old way of playing football. And typically that's not what the Eagles have. They have Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt. So they could use that player to complement them, that type of physicality. TJ Sanders is another defensive tackle from South Carolina.
Yeah.
He might be in the mix. And then if you want to really go off the beaten path in the injury aspect, which didn't work back in the day, so maybe Howie won't do it again, with Sidney Jones. If you're going to move on from Slay, Benjamin Morrison got hurt.
Love him.
A great player, but he hurt his hip. Now, the medical's got to be where they have to be.
Right.
But if you want to just look at, you might be trading down to like 40. And you say to yourself, all right, who's the best player on the board? It might be him if he passes all your medical tests and stuff like that. So those are some of the players I talked about and Jeremiah talked about when it came to
I was reading Andrew DeCecco's. He did his first mock. I liked his pick. This is a guy I watched throughout the college season this year. He had defensive tackle Walter Nolan from Ole Miss.
Yeah, I just mentioned him. He's one of the guys. Yeah. I don't think he'll be there if he's got him at 32.
Yeah.
He's probably going to go 20.
Good replacement for Milton, though.
Yeah, and look, if he's there, it's easy, but I don't think he's going to be there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Same with Stewart. Those are the first two guys I mentioned because if they make it there, I think it's a pretty easy choice, but I don't think he's going to make it that deep. Because he's more of a, athletic pass rushing defensive tackle. Like a run stopper may make it to 32.
Right. Yeah,
I don't think he's going to make it there. Now, Nolan Smith made it to 30 because of his size.
Right.
But that you're not with a guy like Nolan, that's not Walter Nolan. We're not talking about Nolan Smith. He's got everything as far as size, so I don't think he's going to make it that far.
We'll see what ends up happening there. Johnny Mac, good stuff on some of those draft prospects. We'll see what the Eagles end up doing in that first round. John, I bring up, and you talked about trading up and down, and I think it's going to, I'm with you in that. I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging this year. I'm trying to remember correctly, John, and maybe you can help me on this. Back in the Devontae Smith draft, which was the 2021 NFL draft, I believe about a month or so before the draft, the Eagles traded back. I think they had 6.
Yeah,
they traded back to like 12 or 13. And then on draft day, they moved up from 12 to 10 with the Cowboys. I think that's how it went. And the Eagles then selected Devontae. Yeah. Do you think there could be a pre-draft trade to try and get ahead of that draft day, hype that everybody's trying to move at that point? I think Howie could try and get ahead of this if he identifies early he doesn't want to pick at 32.
No, because 32 is about, when you're that far down, it's about people want to wait to see what's there.
Right.
Like people with 32 want a specific player for a 5th-year option. Now, typically that's a quarterback, as I said, so it's going to be more difficult this year. But it can be for other positions. I've talked to Howie about that. There's positions you want the 5th-year option, and there's positions you don't want the 5th-year option. Quarterback is not the only one where you want it. There's some other ones, edge rusher, defensive tackle, those types of things. About, offensive tackle maybe. So you have to wait to see how the board falls. Back the Eagles, I forget where they started. But they were high in the draft, the draft that you were talking about when they moved down. And they had a group of players they liked and felt that they could do that. And knew pretty early in the process that they were going to be comfortable. And to be honest, they thought one of the corners was going to fall to them. That's what they wanted.
Right.
And that was J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, both of them got taken.
So that kind of surprised them.
Has
And then
J.C. Horn lived up to the hype, John? I haven't really followed his career much. I haven't heard his name much.
Well, it's not, he's a very good player. He's been hurt, and he hasn't been Patrick Surtain, who's defensive player of the year, but he's a very good player. The Eagles actually like Horn more than Surtain. They would have taken Horn before Surtain. But they liked them both, and they would have taken them both. But yeah, he's been a very good player. He got hurt his rookie season, got hurt his third season, and he plays on a bad team. But he's really good. He's not lived up to what Surtain has done, so that'll always be held against him because he got chosen first. Horn went 8th, Surtain went 9th. So they had 5 players they were considering, and they thought one of them is going to be there at 12. And of that 5, one was Jalen Waddle, who ironically went 6th to the Dolphins. One of them was Kyle Pitts, who went way before people expected, I believe, number 4. And the other 3 were Horn, Surtain, and Devontae. And now there are, as I said, Jamar Chase was in that draft, but the Eagles didn't think it was realistic. Even at 6, they didn't think it was realistic. And Chase ended up going 5. So he didn't go as high as most expected. But they didn't consider that, realistic. Zach Wilson, that wasn't realistic. Nobody likes to bring that up. And then Penei Sewell was in that draft as well. For some reason, they weren't enamored, which is a bit of a surprise. But those were the 5 players. And once Surtain was the last one to be chosen, and the New York Giants were at the Cowboys were at 10, but the Giants were at 11. And that the Eagles knew, and the Eagles were at 12. The Eagles knew that Giants were taking Devontae.
Right.
So they had to go up and get him, or otherwise they probably would have dropped down. And the Cowboys wanted Micah Parsons, so they're like, all right, we know the Eagles are not taking Micah Parsons. We know the Giants are not taking Micah Parsons, so we can go back to 12 and still get Micah Parsons.
It's amazing how much that move flustered the Giants, though.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
The Eagles take your guy, and then you just take the next wide receiver. I mean, fucking take the better play, take another good player. I mean, that was such a.
It happens, it happened with Houston too. The Eagles, with the tackle they took. I'll have to look that up. I forget the exact, but they panicked too. In the case of the Giants, they dropped down and took Kadarius Toney. With disaster of a pick, even though he did help beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl with Kansas City.
But for them, it was a disaster.
For them, yeah. But anyway, it worked out really well for the Cowboys. It worked out really well for the Eagles, and the Giants got screwed.
I'm surprised that more people don't call out that. I think because we both made out good and people love Devontae Smith, but yeah, Micah Parsons at 12 was a steal for the Cowboys.
Yeah. Well, I always say I hope Micah plays here one day, just because I want to see the 180s.
It would be fun. Yeah, it would be fun.
And he obviously loves.
I would love for Mike Parsons to be in Philly.
He's
I don't know.
great.
One thing I don't know is do you put anything on the I guess the intangibles of the player? Does anything about him raise a red flag in terms of just off the field stuff and distractions and maybe not being bought into the locker room? I don't know. I feel like the Eagles have a tight knit group and a good camaraderie.
I don't know. He's already friends with Slay. I saw AJ talking about that with Gilly.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Gilly the kid, whatever. I mean, people got to get, again, it's as AJ was trying to explain. These guys are all friends. Yeah. I mean, I get it. It used to be different. And I always say, I'm the old guy. I shouldn't be as forward thinking as I am. I'm supposed to be the non-forward thinking guy. Everybody's got a podcast. Jason had a podcast. He started his podcast when he was still playing. That's the most popular one. Slay's got his podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. Mike has got a podcast. Who cares? Can he play? I tell you all the time how The Eagles have a lot of hubris, as an organization. Like, they do not care about 99% of the players' matchups. Like, when we're all talking about what are they going to do? They're like, and we're going to throw it to AJ. Our offensive line, we're going to leave our tackles on an island.
Right.
Our front four is going to beat your ass.
They got supreme confidence in their personnel.
Yes. And they know they can't block Micah Parsons. So when I hear that team talk about that player,
Right.
the way they talk about that player, it resonates with me. And that's why I talk about him the way I talk about him. Nick has been on the record. Forget about it, off the record. That's why I can talk about it. He has said it numerous times. If you can't block him, read him. And that's what they do.
Well, that is Micah's Achilles heel. He's not as good against the run.
They can't block him. And that is the only player I have ever heard.
Well, Myles Garrett that has got to be in that combo.
I've not heard them talk the same way. I've heard Jordan and Lane talk about him in those reverential tones. I've not heard the team. Now, part of that might be they just play Micah all the time. You know, when they did play Cleveland, there was a lot of Myles Garrett talk, and they don't see him that much. So you're probably right. But they play Micah all the time. And
I might have selfishly brought that up because we used to have the debate of, is Micah generational? I have Myles Garrett as generational. I don't quite have Micah.
Myles is like, if you're asking me who's better, Myles is better. But I'm talking about the Eagles and the way, and part of it is just, again, the division rival. They got to play them twice a year. I'm sure part of it is just that, but it is very rare when this team even acknowledges they have to game plan for somebody. And Myles would be in that category as well, but it's more because it happens so often with Micah. It stands out.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Great first hour. The NFL Combine kicks off today, everybody. I believe it starts at 3 p.m. I saw somebody asking in the chat. I believe it's a 3 p.m. start. It's going to be kind of a bunch of different things will be starting at different times. So I already got the NFL Network on in the studio. I'll be watching the Underwear Olympics, as Johnny Mac called them. I'll be watching it for sure. So 3 p.m. is the start time today. We'll get to our first commercial break. When we come back, I got some great things to talk about with John, and we kind of just we touched on them a little bit, but cornerback, what are we going to do with cornerback here with Darius Slay potentially out the door? Linebacker, that Nakobe Dean injury, not a great time for him to get that injury, both at the stage of his career, the stage of his contract, and the time of the year on the calendar. So we'll talk a little bit about linebacker, and then we'll get into draft as well, and talk about some players there. And then a question on the offseason for John about Howie Roseman and the approach. So we'll do all that coming up on Birds 365. I appreciate everybody being here today. It's been great to be back in the studio and talk to all you guys, talk to Johnny Mac, talk to Big Sills, Joe Whip. Good to see you, my man. Jason A-Team, appreciate it, bro. I got your email, A-Team. I'm so pumped you got the JAKIB merch. Thanks for ordering, my man. I appreciate you. James Jones, our resident Commander fans in here. What's up, James? RC3, Fly Parks, Twiz the Jiggle. What's going on, everybody? John, real quick, we'll rattle off 3 super chats. And then we'll get to the break. RC3 became a member. RC3, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. JD3, that's why the players hated Vic in Miami, a bunch of spoiled, soft brats. Now, he sent this very early in the show, so I'm not sure what
he's talking about. The facility.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're spoiled because of their facility.
Yeah. Well, I do think they're not built to handle Vic Fangio. It's amazing the difference in between how they talked about Vic, or at least the few that did talk about Vic.
Yeah, it's a very small group of defensive backs. Yeah. Again, there's Andrew Van Ginkel, loved him.
Right. But still, I mean, you hear all the Eagles stars like, we love Vic Fangio. We love.
Well, I think, again, I tried to explain this. Jalen Ramsey's going to the Hall of Fame. Eagles once tried to trade a first-round pick for Jalen.
He wants to be.
He's going to the Hall of Fame because he's a press cover corner. He's had tremendous success as a press cover corner, the best press corner of his generation. He wanted to play. more press, and that's not what Big does. Sometimes, he got young corners here who don't have that cachet to walk in and say, I want to do this.
Right.
So sometimes the situation works. Again, you're dealing with human beings. Fletcher Cox went through this, and the ship from Jim Schwartz. I talk about it all the time.
I remember that.
Did not like it. But eventually he bought in, and Eagles went to the Super Bowl after the 22 season. 2021, if you remember, Fletch was not the happiest camper in the world.
No, he was not.
Playing 1.5 gap defense, as they call it in the Fangio scheme, instead of the aggressive Jim Schwartz defense where he excelled in. Happens all the time. It's not unique. The Dolphins defense was very good until they suffered injuries to the pass rushers, Jalen Phillips and Andrew Van Ginkel. Look at that defense before that. They were very good. Certain defensive backs did not like it. And the other one, Xavier Howard, by the way, he's like a 3-4-time Pro Bowl corner. So, again, different standard than rookies coming in who are going to acquiesce.
Right. Yep, no doubt. Good stuff there, JD3. Appreciate it. One more from JD3. JD3, thanks for your support, my man. I do appreciate it very much. He says Greenlaw going to have to give Big Dom a cannoli a day if he comes to Philly. Put it in the contract. I like it. I think Big Dom would. Big Dom would sign off on that. He would be good with that.
He's not coming to Philly. I said he might be a value for someone out there.
Well, I do want to talk about him when we come back because I have some linebacker discussion I want to have with you. So we'll talk about him a little bit. JD3, thanks for the super, brother. Philly Don, what's up, Philly Don? Good to see you, brother. Hope everything's going well with you. And King James, he says, John, what's more likely that Howie would do? Trade up or trade back or stay put with 32?
Oh, trade back if you can, but it takes it takes two to tango. Most people think this is not the best draft in the world, and there's not much difference from 15 to 40. So, if you can get a similar player at 40, and you can add extra assets, you do that. So, but there's going to be a lot of teams looking to trade down. So it's always easier said than done, but yeah, his preference would certainly be to trade down.
We'll see what they end up doing in the draft. Great stuff. Great first hour, everybody. Combine kicks off today, so looking forward to that. At least we'll have some stuff to talk about, and we'll review it from that perspective. And then we talked about that NFLPA survey already today. Kind of a nothing burger, to be honest with you, but we talked about it anyway. Good stuff. Appreciate all you guys for being here. I'll give you a quick live read. We'll take a commercial break, and then we'll be back to have some great hour 2 topics as well. Let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Go check them out. It's betus.com.pa. Use the promo code YouTube150. Gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they'll even give you your own custom account manager. So big thanks to them for sponsoring the show today. And go check out BetUS at betus.com.pa. We'll be right back in 3 minutes, everybody.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Ignite your nights with free live entertainment daily, only at Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia's Center Bar. 7 days a week, enjoy some of the region's top party bands, performers, and DJs as they take the stage in the heart of the casino action. Great cocktails, live music, and lively moments. It's all happening at Center Bar at Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia. Visit livecasinophilly.com for more details and the complete list of upcoming events. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong as the #1 health insurer in the region. No IBX is always looking out for you.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports as the NFL Combine kicks off today, looking at 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock Eastern, so it's going to be going on all afternoon with all sorts of different things going on. The Underwear Olympics is kind of what it's called. Kind of corny, kind of cheesy, but a necessary thing in the NFL offseason. So we will be tuned in on that later today, and then we'll have some coverage, some reaction.
Not for Sean McVay. It's not necessary.
No, Sean McVay's out, and he had one of the best drafts in the entire NFL last year.
Yes, he did.
Cam Kitchens, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse.
They had the defensive rookie of the year and number 3, and the Eagles had number 2 and number 4.
Right. If I were a coach, I would be the type of guy that would want to be at the combine, but I understand multiple sides as well, and they've obviously been drafting well, so no complaints about the Rams. But nope, that kicks off today, so we'll see what the Eagles do. Howie was down there, he spoke. Nick Sirianni was down there, they spoke. A lot of tush push talk, kind of bogging down the questions with those guys. But it is what it is. We'll see how all of that develops. Johnny Mac got some good questions for you here, and I do want to get into Eagles offseason and what they're going to do on some of these things, because in the first position I'm going to go, John, is cornerback. All right. And I look at Darius Slay, and I assume he's out the door. I assume they're probably not. Now, do you think, real quick before I move on, do you think Slay will be back, or is he gone, in your opinion?
Tough decision. We talked about that a little bit with BLG yesterday on the show. He's 34, going to be 35 on New Year's Day next year. Typically, that does not bode well for an NFL corner, but he played very well this season. Big part of that defense. Not easy to replace. How long can you keep it going? He's under contract technically, but that's not going to work because
no guaranteed money, right?
No guaranteed money. Salary cap number's too high, so something's got to be done. Either they'll work something out, or they'll release him with a post June 1st designation, which you can do early now. They changed the rule a couple of years ago, but and then you get some cap space back, but you would have to do it post June 1st. He himself has, talked about he is going to play, wants to continue to play one more year, and he wants to play here or Detroit, his old team. So that would be interesting. And same thing with Detroit. It sounds great story. Drafted him, turned into a potential Hall of Fame player. Do they want a 35-year-old cornerback? It's going to be interesting, but he can still play. But he might have hit the Stephon Gilmore portion of his career. And by that, I mean, Gilmore's 34, 35, still very good. kind of amazing that he continued to play the way he plays, but he's already in that, 2 years ago it was Dallas. Last year it was Minnesota. I forget what the year prior. It's like, he's on those 1 year. All right. Basically what happened last year is, Minnesota got to camp and said, oh, our corners are pretty shitty. Let's go get Stephon Gilmore for 1 year, whatever they paid him, $8 million. I think that's where Slay's going to be this year. 1 year, maybe a little bit more than that, 8-9 million. I think that's the stage he is.
Yeah, it's tough to evaluate. I mean, he was good for the Eagles this year.
Yeah,
but he missed a lot of time too. Like it felt like almost every game there at one point that he was coming in and he would leave for at least a little bit of the game, almost every game. And I think that's just a product of being older. So I don't know what they're going to end up doing there. But John, let's just presume for a second that the Eagles move on from Slay. Okay, what's your solution at cornerback? Is it kick Cooper outside? Many people have pushed back on me on that. That's what I like. I like the idea of putting Cooper outside. Is it Isaiah Rodgers? Do you sign Isaiah Rodgers back? Do you go into the draft with a guy like Benjamin Morrison, who you brought up? They just spent their two top picks on secondary guys. Are they going to go down that road again? This is a tough position, John, if Slay's out the door. How do you see Howie addressing this, assuming Slay is gone just for the sake of the conversation? And what would you like to see him do, or what would you expect them to do to try and?
I would expect him just to, re-sign Isaiah Rodgers and have a competition between him and Ringo, and hope they'll cross their fingers that Ringo wins the job. That's, I think, the way they would handle it. Short term, the Cooper stuff that I've talked about, eventually it's going to be a discussion, probably not this year. But again, business comes into it. Mentioned that with BLG yesterday. At some point, because the NFL is the way the NFL is.
Right.
If you want big money, you're going to have to play outside. Now, the Eagles could rip that up and say, oh, you know what? He's so important to us. We're going to pay him, even though he's a slot corner. So, but that all hinges on Kaylee Ringo turning into a big-time NFL corner. Can he do that? I don't know. We haven't seen it. He's certainly got the talent. He's got everything you need from a trait standpoint. He's long, he's fast, he's big, he's physical. He's already a great gunner. Big talked how that translated. Most guys are good on special teams. Translate pretty well to defense at some point.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If you're really bad on special teams, you're probably not going to be really good on defense. So
Keely hasn't quite been able to put it all together. Now, I will say he's still really young. He's only 22. He turns 23 this offseason.
Very young.
Very young guy, but I haven't quite, put it this way, and I don't want to disparage the player. I think the player could have a good future in the NFL, but if you come into the season next year and you tell me you got Quinion, and what would it be, by the way? Would Quinion replace Slay on the right side, and then they would put them at the left? Would they keep Quinion where he was and replace Slay with Keely and Isaiah on the other side?
Yeah, that would be, that would be if Quinion's comfortable where he is, I don't think you move him, but that's something you look at in training camp. Obviously, they all cross-trained at both positions, but Ringo was a backup to Slade mainly, and you could just push him in that way. But yeah, I do think that he's the guy. Like Isaiah Rodgers, there's some limitation because, let's be honest. I mean, he's undersized, and you saw it a little bit this year. As good as the Eagles were, there were a couple teams that said, "All right, we're gonna test him." And they're, if you're playing, there's a big difference between playing the number of snaps Isaiah Rodgers did, and he did a great job in them, versus being out there every single play. And the size stuff would eventually show up. But,
I don't think Ringo would beat out Rodgers for that outside corner spot. That's just from what I've seen. Doesn't mean I'm right, or it doesn't mean I will.
Well, he didn't do it last year, but he's very young. You know, Isaiah's far more experienced, and you're talking about a backup player. You know, one of the things I always make the baseball comparison, old school baseball. Some guys were great utility men, as they used to call them, and probably still call them, and they only play once a week, and then they'd sit maybe once every 10 days. And then they'd have to sit and show up one day and perform. Some guys can't do that. Some guys can't sit and then show up and get a big pinch hit.
Right.
And they can't do it. It's just they have to play. They have to get consistent playing.
Right, they got to be in rhythm. I get that.
Maybe that's the deal with Kelee Ringo. He's losing. He lost out to Isaiah Rodgers as a backup cornerback. Now it's a whole different ball game. Now it's, you know, if you're healthy, how many snaps and you know, because Slay wasn't healthy, but he was still over 900. Quinyon was at 1,100, almost 1,158. That's what you're talking about. That's how many snaps you're going to be out on the field. And that's a big difference from the pinch hitter role. And he's more equipped physically to handle 1,158 snaps than Isaiah Rodgers is outside.
Right.
So different roles sometimes require different things. And I will say this, the Eagles will go into that competition if that's the way they decide to go, hoping that Kelee Ringo wins the job.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean if Isaiah Rodgers doesn't beat him out, he beats him out. But
what type of money do you think Isaiah Rodgers is going to get? Because I think a team could swoop him up.
I don't think he's going to get that much. I know the projection was really low. I think he's getting much more. But the projection, and I'm trying to.
Is it going to be 5 million, 8 million? Like where are we?
The projection was 1 year, $3 million.
He's going to get more than that.
I believe he is. But I don't think it's going to be a ton. He might get 2 years. And I think that might be the difference.
Two-year deal with him for 14 million, 7 million a year with 8 million.
Yeah, I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to. I don't think people look at him as a starting corner.
Yeah, but does that give you some stability there to allow Kelee Ringo to develop, you know, and gives you a little bit more flexibility? Because I don't really see the Eagles with what they invested in the corner last draft. I don't see him drafting another corner super high.
No, I don't think they're going to draft a corner. The only
money.
reason I brought up Morrison is because he's, you know, might have been a top 20 pick if he didn't.
Yeah, I believe me, I love that. I would be happy as hell if they drafted him. I like that player.
And I say if you're at 45 or whatever you trade down to, and you know, then maybe the value overcomes because of the ceiling of the player. But yeah, that's very unlikely to happen. I just threw it out there. I don't think you have to overpay the guy. I mean, you can get him back. He knows what he's one of those guys that's very loyal to the Eagles because they gave him a chance when nobody else would give him a chance.
Right.
They signed him before they signed him when they had to wait for him because he was suspended for a year. By the way, that suspension, fair or not, will take down his value as well because people will put that into the equation. So I think if they want Isaiah Rodgers back, that's one of the easiest contracts they're going to be able to do. And I think 1 for 3 is, I agree with you, is not way short, but I 1 for 5 or 2 for 10, if you want to go that route. And I don't even think you have to. I think the Eagles can get that done pretty quickly.
Yeah, we'll see if they end up doing that. It could be interesting to do there. I will say this. I wouldn't feel overly confident in the secondary if we go into the season in August and September with
that's low. I'm just looking it up. 1 year's $3 million, $1 million guaranteed.
Oh,
got to get more than that.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel overly confident though. Just to finish my point of, if you come into the year with Quinyon, Isaiah, and Cooper as your slot. I mean, I don't know. Am I crazy for wanting Cooper to be outside? Why do I want Cooper to be? That seems like the obvious answer for me when you're talking about Slay being.
No, I mean, the Eagles, I talk it all the time. I talk to the scouts. I mean, that's what they scouted him as. That's what he played at Iowa. There's
Yeah, he
all
was
this
damn good
talk
at it.
about all this talk about him moving around at Iowa. He played very little as a rover or a slot player or an inside player. He played over 90% of the snaps at outside corner. That's what the Eagles scouted him as. That's what they believed he was. The fact that he's such a good football player and he can do other things. Again, let's be honest. Some of it has to do with people don't think a white guy can play corner.
Yeah,
and I say,
that's
somebody put up his basketball highlights again. I mean, watch it. He's one of the best. I brought up his math bomb. Yeah, I'll do it again if I can find it. His combine numbers historically were unbelievable. So all these people that think he's not athletic enough to play outside. So here it is. From 1987 to 2024, think about that. 1987 to 2024, there were 2,469 cornerbacks that worked out. Cooper DeJean, from a trait standpoint, this, not only physical, height, weight, bench, but the athletic stuff, 40-yard, 20-yard split, 10-yard split, vertical, broad, blah, blah, blah. Ranked 28th out of 2,469.
That is insane.
This is one of the most athletic people on the planet. So you got to get over your white guy can't play cornerback takes. I mean, he's the most athletic cornerback the Eagles have. And they have some pretty athletic cornerbacks. When you talk about Ringo, who was off the charts athleticism-wise, Rodgers, unbelievable speed-wise, Quinyon, first-round pick in the NFL draft. They got some pretty athletic corners,
right.
And he's the most athletic of them all.
I don't know. You move him outside, then what do you do at slot?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah. Might be tougher to find a slot. Easier outside.
Even with outside being more valuable, at least in the NFL world, it's more valuable.
Yeah, it's easier. It's one of those counterintuitive things.
Yeah,
they don't play they don't pay the tougher position to play.
Maddox, KCA says Maddox. I don't think Maddox will be back, but I don't know. It's an interesting thing because that's what people say. When I say move Cooper outside, people are like, okay, great. Well, what are we doing at slot? And I think that's a fair question. I don't know. And if you're saying it's harder to replace, then presumably or probably the Eagles would keep him at slot. And then I think you're
think about
it on the outside. Probably
the Eagles played good defense last season. Whether Quinyon Mitchell was in, Darius Slay was in, Isaiah Rodgers was in, Kaylee Ringo was in, they played good defense with those outside corners. They didn't play good defense in the slot when Avante was in versus Cooper DeJean.
That's so true.
So, I mean, last year they had plenty of guys who could persevere at outside corner, at least persevere. And Slay and Quinyon played at a high level, but they both got banged up. Slay more than Quinyon, but Quinyon late. And Rodgers persevered and Ringo persevered. Fine. So
we'll see what happens there. Let's go to Josh B. Josh B, what's going on, brother? I'm still working on your giveaway. All right, man. I got to figure out the jersey sizing on that one. Josh B says, maybe I'm remembering wrong, but didn't Coop surprise blow away a lot of people at OTAs more than people thought he would because of the athleticism?
No, I think. Well, I don't know. I mean, everybody with the Eagles knew how athletic he was. I don't. I think there's outside people look at him and say, oh, it's a white guy playing corner. I mean, just is what it is.
Yeah.
But no, the Eagles were very aware of how athletic he was. It's one of the reasons they wanted him so badly.
They're never. My presumption is they're never letting Cooper DeJean at the building because the owner Jeffrey Lurie loves him, and he loved him on draft night, and they showed it on the video that they released.
Yeah.
So they're not letting him out the door. They're not letting him out the door. Can't piss off the owner.
But yeah, I mean, so I guess I don't know what you're speaking of, but it was not a surprise to the Eagles. Was it a surprise to outside world? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Josh B followed up, said it meant the writers.
Yeah, I mean, most of the writers are pretty savvy and understood because we get all the, not all, but most, we get all the testing scores. So it's pretty evident how athletic he was. I was bringing it up all the time about his YouTube clips, his basketball clips. I probably said 10 times on the show, go search it. It's unbelievable.
It
It's
is.
just
They are
exploding off the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, dunks, not the tallest guy in the world, just exploding off the floor.
Justo checks in. He says DeJean is half black. That's why he can play corner. I don't think he is. Isn't he? He's a fully white dude, right?
I think he's fully white, and I don't care. But
I don't either. I don't either. But I get people love to go down that road.
Yeah.
Here's one that's interesting. This name, and while we're on this topic, I do think this name is interesting. Malachi Starks is the name. He has consistently fallen in most of the mocks I've looked at. I don't see him spending a first-round pick on another secondary player. That's my problem with this pick. But Eagle Nest isn't wrong here that he could be safety and a nickel DB. I mean, he's a versatile player. He's pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, look. I mean, at 32, I think Jeremiah picked him so it picked up a bunch when Eagles people.
Okay, is that who Jeremiah put?
Yeah, he put him in his mock, and I'm like, it's not a fit for me. But then you add the Georgia part of it, and that he's a good player. But you got two good safeties. You got, and I love the transitioning of people to the slot. Like it's the easiest thing in the world. We just talked about, oh, he can play the slot. It's really hard to play the slot. And especially for young players who haven't done it. Now I know Cooper did it. He was the best slot cornerback in football. He's the best cornerback in football, if you believe PFF, but I wouldn't count on that happening a lot. Now Vic is very inventive. He can play big nickel. You can play three safeties. He'll utilize what he has the best way possible. But yeah, I saw Jeremiah put that, and I'm like,
I don't see it either.
Especially if you lose. Now, remember, I'm going with the projection that they're losing Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. And I'm pretty sure they're losing Josh Sweat. Milton, maybe 15% chance they work something out. If they lose both of those players, I'm very confident it's going to be a defensive front player. Wherever that pick goes, 32, if they move up, they move back, that first pick is going to be a defensive front player.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. There's another name that a lot of people are talking about, John. And to be fair, I love the name. I love the player. I love them. And maybe it's my Alabama glasses, but I don't see the Eagles drafting him at all. But people love talking about him. Is Jihad Campbell. He's a really great player. But I mean, we're not drafting a linebacker,
come on,
right?
come on.
I mean, he's an edge. He can play edge, but I don't know. Kind of has the mold of a guy that I think Vic Fangio could do a lot with. But just to answer the question from the people, there's a lot of people talking about him. Do you believe the Eagles would even consider drafting him?
No. He's not going to be there, number one, most notably. Number two, they're going to re-sign Zach Bond. So, no, they're not going to. Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be there.
Well, what if Zach Bond gets signed away from someone, gives him $17 million?
Then they'll move forward with Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Well, this is a perfect move on because we just talked about corners. My next position is linebacker to talk about because boy, is this a bad injury for Nakobe Dean, both for him as a player, for the timeline of where he is in his career and his contract, the time of the year it happened. There's now questions about whether he can start the year. If you bring back Zach Bond, who you putting next to him? Is it a guy like that's where I brought up Dre Greenlaw? If they don't feel confident in Nakobe Dean, is Dre Greenlaw an option as a cheap player? I don't know. I do wonder what they're going to try and do at linebacker. Who was your pick to be linebackers in week 1? Mine would be Vaughn and Oren Burks.
Mine would be Bond and Nakobe Dean. Doing more research on the injury he had, it's not, I don't think it's going to be quite as long as people think it is. And part of that is because I saw Nakobe a clean out day and he was already off the crutches.
I know, but that podcast he did the other day scared people for sure. He looked down and he said,
I mean, anytime your kneecap moves, but I mean, from a rehab standpoint, it should be 6 months. And again, I don't expect the Eagles to push him back for the first day, push it to the point he's back for the first day of training camp, which would be a little over 6 months from when he suffered the injury. But, as long as he's ready for week 1, that's all that matters. But the contingency would be like that. They know better than anybody when it comes to the projection, the medical projection. If they have bigger concerns than I have, then it would be Oren Burks. It would be Zach Bond. You just sign Oren Burks. You're certainly not trapped. First of all, you'd have to trade up to get him, Jihad Campbell. And we all talked about, even DJ said, they're not taking a linebacker.
No, they're not.
They don't. They don't.
They haven't done it since what, 1975?
And you think they're going to trade up to take a linebacker?
Yeah, that's not happening. Well, I wanted you to say it because I said it. Sometimes people need to hear from you, so I wanted you to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where he's going, but he ain't making it to 32. And
he's a damn good player, though. That kid's going to be good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is he better than, And there's some talk about him being an edge rusher more than an off-ball linebacker too. And is he better than Will Anderson? I doubt it. Is he better than Dallas Turner? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think he's a fit at off-ball linebacker number 1. He's too big. He's a big dude, man.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. And
could that increase his value though? If you're saying,
well, as an edge rusher, yeah. Right. I mean, that's where I'd play him. I feel like I'm not comparing him to Micah, but I feel like everybody's talking about him. That's what I felt like during the Micah Parsons draft. Everybody was talking about Micah like he's an all-ball linebacker. I'm like, this guy.
It's amazing that Micah fell to 12. We talked about that earlier.
That's because everybody thought he was an all-ball linebacker.
Right.
But he's undersized, and people would look at him and say, he can't be there. Now everybody's looking at Nolan Smith. Jihad's probably 245. I don't know what'll measure it, but he's a big dude. And I'm like, I'd put him as an edge rusher. I don't even want to play him off the ball. And after watching Zach Bond, the year he had, no, people would not be happy with Jihad Campbell playing all-ball linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles as a rookie after watching Zach Bond. And maybe he turns into a great player.
Yeah, I think him to me is more about, honestly, I don't know what. Nakobe Dean's got, John, he's got a lot of injuries at this point. Every year he's got an injury now. Every year he's ended on IR.
Well, that part. But I don't think this particular player, and I'm talking about Jihad Campbell, I get people are worried about injuries with Nakobe. They should be. I do not think he's an off-ball linebacker. I think he's an edge rusher, number 1. So right off the bat, I'm not even concerned about him replacing Nakobe Dean or Zach Bond.
Right.
That's why I go to Oren Burks and Trotter, and you try to cobble it together.
But is he another guy that's molded for Vic Fangio perfectly, who can kind of be that hybrid tweener who's very good off the edge and can drop in coverage if you need him to a little bit?
That's what they were trying to get with Zach, but he didn't use him that way.
Well, they needed a linebacker.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to pull up. Oh, wow. I didn't know Jeremiah's got him at 12th overall.
Ooh,
12th
so
overall.
he's way above. See, there was one mock I saw him. This is why I hate mock drafts. I had one mock draft. He was like way down at 30. I'm like,
well, no, I mean that's legitimate because not legitimate. I mean, most mock drafts are ridiculous anyway, but certainly this time of year when you don't even have free agency, you don't even know what teams are focused on. But that's about the position. All Paul linebacker, I presume. I don't know. Most people are judging Jihad Campbell as an all Paul linebacker. And that's why I bring up Micah Parsons. Most people judge Micah Parsons as an all Paul linebacker because he was too short to be an edge rusher and his arms were not long enough. So they said, he's got to play all Paul linebacker. And then he shows up and somebody gets hurt in Dallas and they say, we're going to let this guy rush the passer and nobody can block him. That's what happened. They drafted him to be an all Paul linebacker.
Right.
And that's why he fell to number 12. That's what I see similarly. Not that he's that player, but I think, and I'm just reading what Jeremiah says the same thing. He played both off the ball and on the edge as an all-ball linebacker. He doesn't possess elite instincts, but offers excellent speed and physicality. All right, right there, I'm playing him at edge. You don't have instincts? I don't want you to all-ball linebacker. Now, I'm not saying Jeremiah's right, but I'm saying if that's the case, if that's true, just let him go be an athlete and rush the passer. And it's not a fit for the Eagles.
I agree.
Well, it would be an edge rusher, but he's never going to get the 32.
Let's get to a couple super chats here. Johnny Mac, good stuff there. Brian Pumper checks in. What's up, Pump? Hope you're doing well, brother. Jalen Walker or Campbell, those two guys are edges, no doubt. I don't think either of them are getting anywhere close to 32.
Come on. I mean, there's no shot.
Jalen Walker.
You do realize where they're drafting, Brian.
Jalen Walker, I think, could be top 10.
Yeah, he's top 10 player. Yeah. I think you're more.
He might be my favorite player in the draft, Jalen Walker.
Well, I think Abdul Carter's the best player.
I just like Jalen Walker a little bit better.
Well, he is Georgia, so.
I don't know. The thing I don't like, well, I guess Jalen Walker's same thing. They're undersized. I mean, Abdul Carter was what, 248 pounds that came in yesterday? I think Jalen Walker's the same right there too.
Everybody's undersized now.
I know.
The game has changed. And that's why, when you look, if you're looking at edge, Stewart from Texas A&M, maybe falls. I doubt it, but he didn't have a ton of production, but he's so athletic. I think people will make that leap. There's a kid from Boston College. I don't want to ruin his name, but he might fall a little bit. And then there's Sawyer from Ohio State, which I think would be a good fit for the Eagles, just as a compliment, because he's a big physical guy and he's more of a physical presence. And then you could play off with Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt and have that big physical presence to sort of complement the really athletic bass guys.
Yeah. Good stuff there, Pump. Appreciate it, brother. James Carver, what's up, James? Hope you're doing well, man. Good to hear from you in the chat today. He says, $20 banger. Thank you, sir. You're coming at it from the old LT is best tackle view. Now value of slot defensive back as the right tackle of old. And now people see that right tackle is required because of mobile quarterbacks. Same is true for slot defensive backs with growth of slot wide receivers like Lamb demanding big money. That's actually a good take by James Carr. I agree with that. That's
James, man, I love you, buddy. It ain't me. All you got to do is look at the salaries. They don't pay slot corners what they pay outside corners.
Right.
Not me. I don't
But
agree with it.
But is what he's saying, which could project in the future that they'd get paid more, viable? I
Well,
think
it
it
ain't
is.
happening. It ain't happening now. It ain't happening. It might happen in 5 years. It might happen in 10 years. It ain't happening next year. It is what it is, man. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think
the dual threat quarterback could change it too, because those slot corners are close to the ball, man. They're close to the line of scrimmage.
look, I think they're tremendously valuable players. Tremendously valuable players. Here's the top paid corners in the NFL. Jalen Ramsey, Patrick Surtain, Jair Alexander, A.J. Terrell, Denzel Ward, Marshawn Lattimore, and then you get the first guy who plays the slot but had been an outside corner for years when he made the money, Marlon Humphrey, Trayvon Diggs, Tyson Campbell, L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Johnson. I can keep going. Carlton Davis, Slay, Trebarius Ward, all outside corners. DJ Reed, outside corner. Look, the NFL does a lot of stupid stuff. One of the stupid stuff, why are incentives based on sacks when everybody admits sacks are for defensive players? Coaches will say, well, look at his pressure rate. Look at the consistent. But they pay him on sacks. And that's why you get these undisciplined guys, the Jason Babbins of the world, going to get the quarterback from hell or high water because that's how they get paid. That's how they get the big money. They do a lot of stupid shit. Are slot cornerbacks very, very important? I'm with you 100%. There are not, who were the two biggest playmakers on the Philadelphia Eagles this season? Offense, defense. You're muted, but I can see you saying
Saquon Barkley, Zach Bond. Yeah.
Yes. Running back, linebacker. The two positions the Eagles have devalued for years. But on the field, who touches it more than a running back other than the quarterback? On the field, who's more involved with the play down to down? A off-ball linebacker or a defensive tackle or a cornerback? Or and second would be safety, and they're second devalued to off-ball linebacker on defense. They do a lot of stupid shit.
Yeah.
Well, when you're talking
but I do think James brings up a good point. Like, right tackles are more valuable now because of dual threat quarterbacks. They run out that way more. So the right tackles become more valuable in recent years.
I agree. Yeah. But the NFL does what it does. And when it comes to slot corners, I just gave you the list.
Yeah.
The only one is Marlon Humphrey, and he moved to slot corner this year.
Yeah, right.
For years, he was their best outside corner. And that's why he got the contract he got. And from a business standpoint, every agent knows that. And they will make it known, right? My guy has got to play outside. At some point, it's coming. I'm just warning you.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing there. Should be interesting to see. Dank Bird Gang, what's going on, my man? I appreciate it. JT Tui Maloau. I hope I didn't botch his name. I'm normally decent at those names, but that's a tough one. Is my number one. Nobody else matters. I believe he's the edge rusher from Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken.
Number one for the Eagles, I hope. Not number one.
Yeah,
I assume that's
for the Eagles. For the Eagles. I saw him comment about him earlier. I think he's talking for the Eagles. He's like, I think he's bigger. I think he's like 6'5", 6'6", 270 or something. And he's a bigger dude.
I don't think he's going to be in the mix at 32, that high. But we'll see. I mean, I think that's more of the Sawyer range. And they got a lot of good players at Ohio State, obviously. But yeah, he's a bigger guy as well. So I think that the same rules apply in the fact that the Eagles could probably use a more physical defensive end to complement Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt. so that part of it, and they're going to take multiple bodies on the defensive front. Multiple bodies. If they lose Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, which I expect them to lose both, they gotta add multiple bodies. So they're gonna be interested. They're gonna be interested in guys up and down the draft, not just the first pick. But second, third, everywhere they're going to try to bring in multiple bodies on the defensive front.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing. It's going to be an interesting offseason. I love this time of the year, John, because this is where you build your championship team or you don't. I mean, so Howie crushed it last year. Let's see what he can do this offseason here. Philly Don checks in. What's up, Philly Don? Cooper is the Bird's Swiss Army knife with all the tools he has. I agree with that. I mean, he's definitely a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, he's because understand, he did not play a lot of slot cornerback in college, no matter what you hear. And he just took to it like a fish to water. As impressive as he is physically, his football IQ might be even better. And that's where you get some special shit if you got like really smart players who are really athletic and really have a tremendous work ethic as well. That's when you get special stuff, and that's what you got from Cooper this year.
Well, and we'll see what ends up happening. Good stuff, Philly Don. Appreciate it. One more here in the James Carver. James Carver checking in with $10. Appreciate you, Carver. I understand your current point, J-Mac, but I think Coop will be like the Penei Sewell of slots. They will figure out prior to signing Coop extension that slots require high outside defensive back pay.
Well, I mean, one thing I know about Howie, he's not paying more. Same thing with Isaiah Rodgers I just talked about. He ain't paying more than he has to. It's not good business.
Look, if they really value him, though, they just gave Landon Dickerson a massive contract at guard because they value the guy. I mean, they broke.
Yeah, I don't mind setting the market.
Yeah.
But again, the slot market is not going to be the outside corner market. They don't mind setting the market. They set
What's
the market.
The highest paid slot right now making?
Well, if you want to count.
Marlon's not really great.
Marlon doesn't. I'm trying to find him. Michael Carter II played in the slot. Kenny Moore, probably. Kenny Moore, 21st overall.
What's he making? Okay, so he didn't sign the second contract yet. All right, so
10 million. 10 million.
Yeah, Cooper DeJean's making more than 10 mil when his contract comes.
Oh, well, you're talking the salary cap's going up 20 million.
I know,
20 million. They don't mind setting the market. They did it with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts for 5 minutes was the highest paid player in football history.
Yeah, it was literally like a week, right? And then Joe Burrow or somebody else, or Lamar, somebody usurped him.
Yeah. So, same thing with Landon Dickerson. They have no problem setting the market. But yeah, I'm just, trust me, or don't. At some point, there will be talk about moving Cooper outside because that's where the big money is.
We'll see what ends up happening there. Is Philly Forfeit right? Diamador Lamore. He's that 49ers defensive back. Is he a slot guy? Because I think he got a huge contract, didn't he?
I
don't know if he was a slot guy. Yeah, he signed a 5-year, $89 million contract. He's 25 years old. That kid can play.
I'm looking him up. See how much he played inside versus outside.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Because that's a lot of money. He plays some nickel. He plays both 4-for-4 says.
Yeah, he played more inside. He's more of seems to be more of a box guy. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, 5-year, $88.8 million.
He plays. He
money.
seems like a more of a Josh Metellus type. Plays all over, which those types of players are becoming more valuable too. But yeah, he played a lot inside, so you would have to. But he plays outside too. I don't know. So it's one of those things. It's like Marlon Humphrey too. Well, he played inside, outside. Byron Murphy plays inside, outside. He makes a lot of money. So there's a couple outliers, but usually it's versatility, not just strictly slot. And maybe Cooper gets there because he can do a lot of different things. But this year was pretty much just a slot corner. That doesn't mean he can't evolve. Doesn't mean you can't pay him either. Just saying odds are the outside corners are getting paid more.
Yeah, right. Playing the odds, exactly. I agree. Waldo Vision checks in. What's up, Waldo? Would you consider Nick Chubb at running back 2 on a cheap deal? I would. I don't know if the Eagles would. I would. I like the player. He's coming off a bad injury, though.
I mean, that's all medical. And, he's arguably the best running back in football before that injury.
Yeah, that's the kind of runner I want, though, with Saquon. A big body guy. You can run
I don't think Nick Chubb. If Nick Chubb is healthy, he's not coming here to play a
second fiddle to Saquon. Yeah, I don't think so either.
No. I mean, like I said, he was a big time back. So from the standpoint of health, number one, you got to figure out because he did not look healthy last year. So he might just never be the same guy, number one. But you got to trust your doctors. He's also going to be 30. I mean, the Eagles, I get what you're saying because of Detroit. But the Eagles already, they're riding Saquon Barkley until the wheels fall off. They're not changing.
Yeah, right.
They're not saying, "Oh, let's play maintenance on Saquon Barkley so he's playing in 2028." They're not worried. They're not worried about that. They're going to manage him during the week, and he's going to be the guy, and Will Shipley's going to be the backup most likely, and that's it. And that's what they should do. And you'll need another young sort of guy behind Will, sort of to replicate Kenny and Will last year, because you can't just assume Saquon's going to be healthy for 21 games again. But yeah, I don't think you're seeing this dramatic shift to more of a Detroit approach and taking touches away from Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I don't think so especially because of those receivers that you have. And, Dallas Goedert, he was the other guy I wanted to talk about today, but we ran out of time. I mean, good. So it's always good when you come into a day with no guests and you run out of time to talk about what you want to talk about. But, the last thing I wanted to talk about, and we only have a couple minutes left, so we'll keep this real quick and maybe we can continue this tomorrow. But are there any trade or cut candidates on this team right now? I think Slay's the obvious one, but outside of Slay, I mean, is there
notable?
Yeah.
Let me pull up the Eagles.
Is Dallas Goedert? I don't think so.
They don't have anybody. I mean,
after
the draft, if they draft one of those tight ends. And even then, it's very unlikely because you want to see. I mean, you can't just assume if you're taking a kid at, say, 38, Jason Taylor's kid, for argument's sake. You can't just assume he's going to come in and be a starting level tight end on a Super Bowl roster. But I do think if they go that route and they take one of the big tight ends, this could be the last year for Dallas Goedert. I do think that.
Yeah.
But I don't think this season is.
There's just no contingency yet, John. I mean,
no. Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, you comfortable with Grant Calcaterra being
Hell no.
tight end?
Hell no. Hell no.
The Eagles already highlighted that they know they need more depth at tight end. They brought in 2 futures players at the end of the season.
Right.
Nick Muse from Minnesota and Cameron Latu from
Who
San
I like,
Francisco.
actually. He's not bad.
Well, he's an Alabama guy. That's why I like him.
Well, he
a
wasn't
third-round
bad.
pick.
I don't know what he's done in the pros, but he was a good player.
The Eagles always take the failed 49ers third-round picks. Trey Sermon, Ty Davis-Price, Cameron Latu. There's another one I'm forgetting. They always take the.
Was he a Niners pick? I didn't. Follow him much.
Third-round pick. Yeah. But they've indicated they know they need more depth at tight end, and what I always say when they drafted Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz was 2 years younger than Dallas Goedert is now. So, and Zach, by the way, when they drafted Dallas Goedert, that was 2018. That was the year Zach Ertz had 116 receptions or whatever and set the NFL record for most receptions by a tight end in a single season. Like in other words, I'm trying to say they were proactive, understanding they needed, even though they had a great tight end, they needed more. And the same thing is going to happen. The same thing might happen this year with Dallas Goedert. They know his injury history, his age. They know they have to start thinking about life after Dallas Goedert, but it ain't this year. It ain't this year. No way.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. John, great show today, man. We rolled through the combine kicks off today, so we will be following along. You heard John on the show today give some of his best draft prospects. Focus on that defensive line, okay? Focus on that defensive line today, and we will be following. Abdul Carter had that injury or that stress reaction, as they called it. Will he get surgery? We'll follow along on that, and we recapped it all. Johnny Mac, your final thoughts on today's Thursday edition of Birds 365 as the combine is set to kick off today at 3.
Eagles aren't getting Abdul Carter, even with the injury. His big Eagles fan, Philly kid, would have been a great story. But when you win the Super Bowl, you're not getting the best prospect in the draft.
No, you're not. And when you're the best prospect in the draft, you're rarely going to a team as good as the Eagles. So now Jalen Carter, I don't know how that happened. We got him, which was crazy. But
Chicago Bears send the thank you cards. That one of many teams.
Ryan Poles,
most notably,
thank you.
The gutless nature of the Chicago Bears.
All right, Johnny Mac. John, great show today, brother. We will catch you on a Football Friday tomorrow on Birds 365. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, thanks everybody.
All right, there's John McMullen joining in here on Birds 365. I'll kick it around with you guys for just a couple of minutes here on Zander time today. I want to get some of your guys' takes. I was out on Monday. Boy, do I hate taking days off. It hurts my soul to take days off. That's why I didn't put it out until late Sunday night. I was trying to figure out a way to do the show on Monday. I couldn't do that with where I was and with the things that my family had planned for our vacation. So I hate taking off. I hate getting out of my rhythm. I hate not doing shows. So I missed you guys on Monday. All right. We figured out a way to get it up on Tuesday to get to do the show on Tuesday, but I hate taking days off. Good to be back in the saddle with all of you guys. Appreciate everybody for being here. SC Birds, what's going on, my man? Devin Shanahan, good to see you. Nad, what's up, Nad? James Jones, Eagle Nest, James Carver. Good to see everybody in here right now. Here's what I want to ask you before we get out of Dodge. All right. I'm not going to be on for too long. I'm still kind of playing catch up on some of the stuff that I missed and that I have to get done. There is one thing I do want to update on the people on giveaways. Let me just do that real quick. All right. Cause I don't want you guys to think I forgot about you. I didn't forget about you. All right. Chasen got his jersey. Crowley got his jersey. Prince got his jersey. The one guy I'm working on jersey is Josh B. And No Limit, I have to send yours still. Josh B and No Limit. All right. So No Limit, I'm sending him the XL. Josh B, I'm working on another size for you. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, but I'll DM you about that. All right. So appreciate your patience. I will get it done. All right. I will get it done for you. Don't worry. I didn't forget about you. I didn't forget about anybody. I don't forget about the great people of JAKIB Nation. So I did not forget about you. And then Eagle Nest, I still got to work it out with you. I still got your thing sitting over there. So will I send it back to Canada? What will we do? Maybe you'll come into Canada. I'll treat you for a lunch and a jersey. I don't know. We'll figure it out, brother. I owe you, though. All right, Eagle Nest. So we'll talk about that. I got to respond to your email and then go up to the post office on that. All right, here's what I want to ask. Here's what I want to ask you guys today, and I'll get some names. All right, I'm gonna have you guys help me play catch up. Okay, play catch up. Who do you like at 32? Let's say the Eagles stay put at 32. Who do you like at 32? Who are the names that stick out to you at 32? I know a lot of you guys talk. I'm trying to keep it realistic, though. Like Jihad Campbell at 32, guys, I don't see it. I don't think it's happening. All right. Abdul Carter, not happening. I mean, Jalen Walker, not happening. Who do we like at 32 right now? Niner says trade up for Shedeur. Not happening. Shedeur is not even, I don't even know if he's worth the first rounder. I think he could have success in year one. It's different with the dual threat quarterbacks today that they can have success earlier in their careers because of the way that they play. Rico March says Jack Sawyer. I like Jack Sawyer a lot. I don't know if he's going to fall to 32, but I like Jack Sawyer a lot. All right. Eduardo says Sawyer as well. Yeah, James, I agree. I kind of emailed you that, I think, right? Arms fit thinner. James Pierce is great out of Tennessee. I like James Pierce a lot. Good name there, Dakota. The DT from Toledo. I'm blanking. Why am I blanking on his name? I saw that. Walter Nolan's going to be good. I don't. Sills like Sawyer too. Yeah, I saw that, Mel. Sills is a big Sawyer guy. I like Sawyer too. I think he's gonna be great. Deshae, this is my problem with Sawyer. I love the player. I love the mentality. I love all the intangibles. I love the size, the strength, the athleticism. I don't think he fits Vic's scheme well. Deshae, I'm feeling the same as you. He's not a cover guy at all. We'll see what happens. Some people say Sawyer's going to fall. I don't know about round 2. Twiz checks in. Donovan Izaraku and Landon Jackson. I love Landon Jackson. Landon Jackson is one of my favorites. I think he could be a good name. And I think he'll be there at 32. Vulnerable Vitality. What's up, Vulnerable Vitality? Appreciate you, brother, for the $10 super chat. Let me see what you're saying here. He says, we're taking Luther Burden the third. No, we aren't. Who's he, the Missouri guy? Let me look him up. Where is he projected? He's young, 21 years old. Boy, I'm getting old, everybody. When all the draft prospects are now 6 years younger than me, good Lord. I'm getting old, everyone. I know you guys think I'm young, but I feel like I'm an old head. I'm an old fart. I'm damn near extinct with how old I am. I'm damn near extinct. 32 for James Pierce would be great. Yeah, Dakota, I'm with you. I am with you 100%. I think he's trading that pick. I think he's trading that pick. Let me go back to vulnerable, though, and talk about Luther Burden for a second. 21 years old, wide receiver. Okay, so you're messing around. You're messing around, Vitality, because there's no way we're taking a receiver. Joe Whipp says, no, I am an old fart and proud of it. Me too, Joe. All right, you might not think it yet, but I'm there with you. All right. Trade up or trade back. I think trade back, SC. I think it's trade back. Try and get another second-round pick or another third-round pick. Because like you heard John say, the whole draft board feels like from 15 to 50, there's a lot of, not much difference in the guys. Oh, vulnerable. That's right. I forgot you were a Missouri guy. He's a great player, Luther Burden. I don't know where he'll go, but young, 21 years old. All right. We'll see what ends up happening with him. Yeah, I see a trade back as well, 4 for 4. All right. Let me look for some other names you guys brought up. I'd like to try and get to some of the other names you guys brought up. I do like Landon Jackson. Eagle Nest with some good names here. I like this. James Pierce, Walter Nolan. I love Walter Nolan. I'm with the Checo on him. I just don't see him falling to 32. Jalen Walker, not happening, bro. Top 10 player. I think he's going to be top 10. I think he has a chance. He would have a chance to be top 5 if the quarterbacks weren't boosted up. Nick Scorton, I like him. I like Scorton a lot. He's a little bit bigger, isn't he? Yeah, A&M defensive lineman. He's bigger, 6'4", 20 years old. Holy shit, man. 2004 born. That's crazy. That's crazy. 6'4", 280. So he's a bigger guy, that's Scorton. And Gray Zabel. I like it. Yeah, I really started to dive into the draft this week. So Busy Dallas checks in. Walter Nolan, TJ Sanders. I like that. I like Walter Nolan a lot. I just don't know if I don't think he's going to fall. So, but Walter Nolan's a Howie pick too. You know, an athletic interior defensive line guy. Perfect replacement for Milton Williams. I think he had like 6 sacks last year. A bunch of tackle for losses. Great player. Really good player. So I like him a lot. I think Walter Nolan could be a guy that the Eagles would target. I just don't know if he would fall. I don't know if he would fall at all. So there you go. That's that name. Thank you, Derriere. Darius Alexander is the name of the Toledo guy. And as the Toledo guy. So he would be good. 6'4", 310. He's huge. 310. Holy moly. Is he projected as a nose? That's a big boy. 3.5 sacks. I like Alexander, but I don't know what he projects in the NFL. Chasen, what's up, Chasen? Appreciate you, bro. He says, hey, brother, my jersey came in. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for the awesome card as well, man. Much love. Chasen, I'm also sending you JAKIB merch, but I had a little bit of an issue with your address. They canceled my order, so I'm reordering that. I had to wait for the budget to close. Long story. But anyway, Chasen, I got some JAKIB merch coming for you as well, man. I appreciate your support and appreciate the $10 super chat. Hope you're doing well, brother. Hope you're keeping that head up and everything's going well in your world. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you. How do you feel about linebacker Darius Knight out of Boston College? 3rd-rated linebacker in the draft. Could be there at 64. Eagle Nest. Here's my problem with him. It's not about the player. I don't think the Eagles are spending a 2nd-round pick on a linebacker. I just don't. I know Zach Bond has us kind of in linebacker heaven right now, and we feel great about linebackers and how he's going to shift and value linebackers more. A 3rd-round pick on Nakobe Dean was huge for the Eagles. I don't think they're going to go, especially, by the way, when you're limited in picks. Free agency is not great, all right? Free agency is not great this year. I think that's the other problem I have with the Myles Garrett talk right now is the Eagles need all these picks because that's part of the reason that Howie's philosophy is working so well because he's drafted so well. So you're telling me he's going to get rid of some of those picks, and now you have to rely on 4th rounders, 5th rounders, 6th rounders. I don't see it. I don't see how we getting rid of that stuff. We'll see, though. Vulnerable Vitality. What's up, Vulnerable? Checking in again. I want, if you could, to ask those around JAKIB, who's that 5 to 7 round player you're enamored on? That's a good question. I'll take some comments on that right now. I can't say I have that player yet in mind. I can't say I have that player in mind right now, Vulnerable, but I will pose it out there to some people. Who do you like 5 through 7? Are you looking at a running back in the 5th round? I know there's that Miami guy, Damian Martinez, I think his name is. Are you looking at an offensive lineman, a guard, a tackle in the 5th round? Wide receivers are interesting. I think you could go talk about wide receiver at that point. I like that Miles Frazier. I think he's that guard out of LSU. I like him. Yeah, Martinez is solid. I like Damian Martinez. I think he's a Miami guy. That's where I think you could be talking about a linebacker. There you go, linebacker out of Cal, Teddy Buchanan. I like that Shamar James, too, from Florida. I think those guys, skill position, but also, look, Vulnerable. That's where you're also talking about linebackers. That's where you're talking about bolstering that offensive line. I mean, skill positions, yes, but Vulnerable, we got good skill position players right now. Like, I don't know. Running back, I think for sure. Wide receiver, Wouldn't surprise me if they didn't draft a wide receiver this year. All right. Wouldn't surprise me at all. While I agree with skill position, I think linebacker and offensive line are going to be even more important. This is a great one by Chuck Hutton. Draft a center. Yeah, I mean, we're getting operated with Cam Jurgens on the back right now. Not ideal. Not ideal. I think an offensive tackle could be there too. It's good. Lewis, Philly, I meant to bring him up today. I called you Lewis because you were talking about Lewis. I meant to bring this up today to John. I didn't talk about Lewis Cine. Haven't heard anything about where he is as far as competing. Look, I think they kind of took him as like a future deal type of guy. We'll see what he does in training camp. He's a safety. Maybe he's life after Reed Blankenship. Maybe he's, life after C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Lewis Cine. He came from Minnesota, didn't really live up to the draft pick. They did. They signed him to the active roster. But I meant 4 for 4. They signed him with the idea of the future. That I didn't mean like it was a futures deal. I didn't mean a futures deal. I meant looking at him as a future player. I don't know what they're going to do with him. But no, you're right. It was active roster. It was not a futures contract. Philly Don says we need a wide receiver 3 in 4th or 5th round. Why? Philly Don, why? I mean, you got Jahan Dotson under contract this year. You just drafted Johnny Wilson and who's the other guy? Anais Smith. James Carver. Your worst take in Jacob Land. Your worst take in Jacob Land was Anais Smith contributing. All right. Good pun here by Chuck Hutton. Still remains to be seen. Good stuff there. Kenny P. Lewis Cine's nothing until he is. I agree. Dotson, Anais, and Johnny. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if we didn't draft a wide receiver this year. Now, maybe Anais Smith is cut this year. I think that's probable. Johnny Wilson did nothing. He could block. So we'll probably keep him around because we're a run-first team. So probably keep him around to block. But Anais will be fine. I think Anais is getting cut this year, to be honest with you. Well, maybe not, but they almost cut him last year. I mean, and they don't like cutting draft picks. They don't like cutting draft picks. By the way, one thing I want to go back on that I didn't agree with John McMullen on was James Carver, your point about the contracts. James, I'm with you 100%. I think there's a sea change happening across the NFL on many positions. You brought it up with right tackles. How much more valuable have right tackles become with dual threat quarterbacks? I mean, James, I think you're on to something completely. And I think it changed my perspective on Cooper a little bit because I think the Eagles could break the bank and go $20 million on Cooper DeJean, even if he stays inside the slot. Philly Don follows up. Which had wide receiver 3 actually had a good season this past one, Zander? Yeah, not many. But, Don, I think Dotson is better than – I'll eat crow on Dotson. I was kind of calling out Dotson, like, what the hell is he? But I just don't think he was getting the ball. I mean, how can I judge a player who just doesn't get the ball? And then when they did give him the ball in the Super Bowl, he made big plays, 2 big plays in the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm eating crow a little bit on Dotson because I don't think it came down to him much, honestly. In fact, I think he's probably a great wide receiver 3. People give up on players way too fast. They were rookies. I agree, Zach. I agree. But, Zach, it's also, look, here's the problem with what you're saying here. Because you're not wrong, but it's a cold business, dude. They're going to draft 6 more players this year, 7 more players this year. All right? You also have the futures contract guy. You also have, Zach, you're saying it's a terrible take to cut Anais Smith. Dude, they almost cut him last year. So it's not really. Getting your roster down to 53 is not easy. Eventually, you're going to make tough cuts. Sorry, Zach. I don't really agree with that at all. I agree with that people give up on players too quick. That I agree with. I don't agree it's a bad take that they might cut Anais Smith. He did nothing for him last year. He was nearly cut at the beginning of the year. He had the injury. I don't know about that, bro. I mean, some 6th-round picks you just kind of let go. All right, some 6th-round picks you just let go. Maybe he won't get cut. I don't know. A-Team says I don't think he'll get cut. All right, same thing. They were not going to cut him, just fan of my arm. All right, so you're bending it to fit your narrative. That's fine. You can bend it the other way too and say they're going to move on from him because he had no value for the team this year. I mean, Howie's going to bring in a bunch of draft picks, a bunch of undrafted free agents, a bunch of futures contract deals, which he's already done. You know, making the 53 is not a guarantee for Anaya Smith because he was a 6th-round pick in 2024. It's just not. It's all right, Zach. It's not true. If he performs, yeah, he'll be here. Eagle Nest checks in. AJ said Hurts needs to trust the guy to throw him the ball. Dotson didn't get a full offseason with Hurts being traded during camp. Dotson and Hurts will have better chemistry. That I agree with for sure. That I agree with before, for sure. We'll see what ends up happening. All right, everybody. I wanted to get some of your takes on draft guys. You guys gave me some good guys to think about. I'm going to dive into the draft. I've already been diving into it a little bit more, but I did dive in yesterday. I'm going to be watching the combines today, so that draft stuff is going to start to really ramp up this year. So we'll see what ends up happening. I appreciate some of the names you guys gave me. Looks like you guys are all up to date and ready for this NFL draft. I certainly am ready for this draft. Looking forward to it. So appreciate all you guys for being here. I will have a couple more giveaways coming up at some point in the future. I'm trying to work on No Limit and Josh B first. I do have that Cooper DeJean 2XL jersey I can give away, so I'll give that away eventually, but nothing today. I appreciate all of you guys checking in today. Hit that like button on your way out. Had pretty good viewership here as the Combine kicks off today. Appreciate all you guys. See you next time, everybody, on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 360.